What's up, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Catholic Girl on the Radio. I'm Rita Sekali, and this is the show that takes you to the early church fathers' writings and brings them to modern day so that we can understand them and so you and I, can benefit from this wealth of information that we have, this wealth of knowledge that we have that really transform the Christian faith. All right, my friends, let's get started. All right, my friends. So we're starting off our journey from Matthew 5:43 through 48. And there is a lot to unpack here. So the explanations are pretty lengthy. So I'm pretty sure that we're going to have to divide this into 2 episodes, not just 1. But here we go. Let's do this. Matthew 5:43 through 48. Jesus said to his disciples, "You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbors and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your heavenly Father. For he makes his sun rise on the bad and the good, and causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what recompense will you have? Do not the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brothers only, what is unusual about that? Do not the pagans do the same? So be perfect, just as your heavenly Father is perfect." The Gospel of the Lord. Now we're going to take a look at verse 44 with St. Augustine of Hippo, which he says that you've heard it said that you should love your neighbors and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Where Jesus challenges us, right? It's a little bit different than what is intuitive. And this entire paragraph is about being different anyways. All right, so Augustine in the year 430, this is what he says. He says that there's a certain level of righteousness in the Pharisees, which that righteousness, it belongs to the old law. And it is shown by the fact that some people not only hate the people who hate them, but also hate the people who love them. So for example, a spoiled child might hate their parents for disciplining. A person advances to a certain level when they love their neighbor, even if they still hate their enemy, right? They get closer to that love where they can prosper more in society if they love the people who love them, even if they still hate their enemy. But, and this is where Jesus is challenging us, and this is where St. Augustine really wants to emphasize, but in the kingdom of heaven, who came to fulfill the law, not to destroy it, true kindness and benevolence are perfected when a person loves their enemy. Loving a neighbor is something that even tax collectors do. And in that time frame, that is probably the traitor. The worst thing that you could be is a tax collector, because you're betraying your own people for the sake of money. And you're not just doing it on the down low, you're doing it very openly and before everyone's eyes. So he's saying that even those people who are traitors, they're still capable of loving their neighbors. They're still capable of loving the people who love them. And the old law commands to hate your enemy. But that is not a command for righteous people, but a concession to weak people, like those tax collectors, like those who are traitors. Even they can love their neighbor and hate their enemy. But you and I, we're called to be different. We're not called to be like the rest of the world. We're called to something greater than that. We're called to that level of righteousness that God is speaking of, not for the sake of righteousness itself, but for the sake of righteousness before God himself. So Augustine then continues, and he raises a question. He says that there's a question that is raised that cannot be ignored, which is, in different parts of the scripture, there seems to be like a contradiction to this love your enemies type of thing, where we're supposed to do good to those who hate us, but then you have places where it says, let their tables become a snare, let their children be fatherless, and their wives be widows, and these kinds of statements, whereas the Lord commands us, and he says in the teachings, bless and not curse. And he says that, however, these things, these difficulties, these questions that arise from these contradictions can easily be solved. So this is what he is saying. The prophets predicted future events through imprecations, not as prayers for what they wished, but as visions of what was to come. Similarly, when Jesus said, "Woe unto you, Capernaum," he was predicting a future punishment for their unbelief and not wishing it upon them. So Jesus here is not trying to curse Capernaum. He's talking about what is happening or what's going to happen to Capernaum. Whereas the disciple at the same time as well, in the same way as well, the prophets of the Old Testament, they were also doing the same thing. So he continues and he says, the apostles' word, the Lord will reward him according to their work, to his work, are also a prediction and not a curse. When he says, God shall smite you, you with wall, he was predicting the impending destruction of the hypocritical Jew. So again, these aren't curses that he's saying. He isn't cursing his enemies. He is simply saying what is going to happen should they continue in their way of thinking. But that there is a command in the Bible to the power of the tongue, and how a lot of the things that we have to be very careful of the things that we say, and even the thoughts that we allow ourselves to think and go down that rabbit hole. The words that we say, there's power in the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. That's what the Proverbs tell us. And if you desire to see good days, you have to be careful of the words that you're saying, or something to that extent. This is why cursing someone or saying or condemning them in that way is also harmful, because really it is an expression of your life, and it is an expression of the way you're thinking. It is an expression of how you interact. Your words and your thoughts are the words and thoughts that you hear the most throughout the day, because you are the person you spend the most of your day with. So if we're not cognizant of that, then these thoughts can lead us to sinful acts, sinful behavior, and so forth. And so, in this case, to think and to love and to forgive our enemies instead of cursing them is probably one of the most important things that we can do, because it not only affects that person, it mainly affects us and our ability and our capacity to love. And so, to St. Augustine's point, Jesus is not cursing these cities. Jesus is saying that, predicting future events that will happen. And so Augustine goes on and he says that, to further expand on that point, he says that in the Psalms it says, "Why have nations raged and the people plotted in vain?" It talks about future events with the past tense, because these are visions of the future and not curses of those people, right? And he does that to emphasize their certainty. In the same way, it says that they divided my garments among them and cast lot for my clothing, even though it describes a future action. So again, here we have that sense of understanding of love your enemy and do not curse them is not something that is contradictory to what has happened before in the Bible. It's not something that's contradictory to what Christ is saying. It is something that is simply foreshadowing a future event. In short, in all of this, what we want to know, or what Augustine is trying to tell us, is that Jesus commands us to love our enemy. He commands us to pray for those who persecute us and show the highest form of kindness. This so-called curses in the prophets and the word of Jesus and the apostles are not really curses, but rather predictions of what will happen. So based on God's knowledge of the future. I promise you we're going to delve into more of the essence and the practicality of things, but this is something that I saw in the commentary that I wanted to share with you as well. And we're going to go through St. John Chrysostom's commentary, and St. John was in year 407. And this is his commentary on verse 45. And he says, God doesn't hate those who insult him. Instead, he even does good things for them. This situation is very different because his benefits are far greater, and his status is much higher. You are despised by your fellow humans, but he is despised by someone who has received countless blessings from him. Isn't this mind-blowing, you guys? Think about it. For God, it's someone he gives everything to, and he is despised by them, and yet he still loves them. But for us, we are despising someone who's equal to us. You offer words, and so he continues, says, you offer words by praying for them, but he offers great and wonderful deeds, like making the sun rise and sending rain. Still, I grant that you can be my equal as much as a human can be. Still he grants that you can be as equal as much as a human can be. This is in reference to God, of course. And so really what St. John here is alluding to, he's saying, okay, well, look, God is so great, and his mercy is so endless, and his love is so amazing that he makes the sun rise and then sends rain on the people who are good and on the bad. He gives good things to everyone. Yet those who do not love him, those who despise him, those who hate him, don't come back and give him glory. And all you can offer these people is your words and pray. Pray for your enemies. That's all he's asking of you. He's asking for your love and your compassion to be like him as much as you can be. He's not demanding much. He's asking for the little. He says, don't hate the person who wrongs you because they're actually bringing you good things and honor. Don't curse those who mistreat you. Otherwise, you endure the hardships but lose the reward, which is foolish. So in essence, you're going to go through the same pain, right? You're going to go through, we all know how it feels like when you have been hurt by someone, when you are struggling to go through this life as a result of someone who has done something bad for you. You're going to go through that. You're going to go through that. There's no way out of it. When something like this happened, this is what you're going to go through. That's the natural reaction. But hey, what St. John is referring to here is saying, look, you either do the foolish thing and keep that upon yourself and keep going with it and keep that anger and that hate and add to your pain, or you offer forgiveness and you offer love and you learn to let go and you learn to do good things for yourself as well, because forgiveness isn't just about forgiving the other person. It's also about you letting go of that hate. Loving your enemies releases that tension and that anxiety from you as well. So St. John continues and he says, you've endured the greatest hardship, so bear the lesser one too. Someone might ask, how is it possible to forgive? Look at God becoming man and suffering so much for you. That's how you know if it's still possible to forgive. And he goes on to say, do you still question how to forgive your fellow human? Remember Jesus on the cross saying, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Remember Paul saying that Jesus, who is in heaven, intercedes for us in Romans 8:34. Even after his crucifixion, Jesus sent the apostles to the Jews who killed him and bring them blessings, and despite the dangers they faced. And that, to me, also is very mind-blowing. Even after they killed him, even after he forgave them, even after he rose from the dead, it didn't stop there. He sent them people out of love, despite the fact that the people he sent faced a very big and tremendous obstacle every time that they went into these places. How many times was Peter bound? How many times was Paul thrown into prison? All of the disciples got killed somewhere or another, with the exception of John. And he got exiled. He didn't live a perfectly easy life to that as well. Anyway, so St. John Chrysostom continues on. He says, have you been greatly wronged? Think about what Jesus endured, being bound, beaten, spit on, and dying a shameful death after showing countless favors. If you've been wronged, do good to the person who wronged you. This makes your reward greater and help your brother overcome his worst flaws. Just like a doctor's pity and help insane patients who attack them, you should also pity those who plot against you. They are suffering from severe sicknesses. Help them, let go of their anger, and free them from their demon of wrath. When we see people possessed by demons, we feel sorry for them and don't want to be possessed ourselves. These are the words, almost in essence, of St. John. And truthfully, what he's trying to tell you is, one, look at Jesus. Look at how much he endured for you and me. Even though I and you have so many times, out of my own ignorance, out of my own stubbornness, out of my own pride, did not allow him to give me the graces he wants to give me, and have been out of my own will disobedient to him. And I'm sure you've gone through that as well. Look at him, how he forgives us, how we come back to him. Look at him, how he was beaten, spit on, and died a shameful death, even after doing all these things for us, so that we can love him, so that we can have eternal life. Yet how many times do we despise him? So not just for people who do not believe in him, this is also for us as well. Forgiveness is hard. It's not an easy thing, but it is a very freeing thing. And when you look at someone else and say, with humility, and say, God, forgive them, they know not what they do, and that is where freedom exists. St. John continues and he says, we should treat angry people the same way. The enraged are like the possessed, but worse, because they are aware of their madness. Don't trample on them, pity them. If we saw someone sick, blinded, and dizzy from bile, we would help them, even if we stained our clothes. We only care about helping them to overcome their disease. Do the same for those who are angry. Help them until they let go of their bitterness. Then they will be grateful to you and realize how much you've helped. This is, so of course, if it's someone that's hurting you and abusing you, and step away, right? This isn't what St. John is trying to say. This isn't what Jesus is trying to say as well. Don't put yourself in a dangerous way. However, the point they're trying to make here, or he's trying to make here, is this. Just like you pity someone, or you go out of your way to help someone who you know needs help, it's the same thing when people hurt us, and it requires us to forgive. Because a lot of times it's a trigger that was triggered by something, right? At times it's not your fault. You're accountable. Let's say there's 100% of a problem and you caused maybe 2%. You're accountable for that 2% to fix with God and to change within your soul. But then you're left with that 98% to deal with. And that is where your forgiveness comes in. And that is where the freedom of letting go and recognizing that that person is an imperfect person. That person has their flaw. That person has their weaknesses. That person has their problems that they are dealing with. as a person who has a disease or is sick or whatever, has something to deal with. So just changing the way we look at things is very important. And then the last thing he says is that, but most importantly, God will reward you with great honor for freeing your brother from a severe sickness. That brother will respect and honor for your patience. Consider women in labor who might bite those helping them. This is before epidural, right? The helpers endure the pain and sympathize with women. Be like those helpers. Once these men who are weaker than women are relieved, they will recognize your strength and compassion. And these are the words of St. John Chrysostom. Let us continue with our study. And we are going to talk about today is the commentary from Cornelius, a Lapid. I don't know how to say his last name, but he was around in 1637. And he says, "You have heard it said, you shall hate your enemy. But where is this actually written?" And he points to Deuteronomy 25:19. "You shall blot out his name from under the heaven." God commanded Joshua and the Israelites to destroy the wicked Canaanites and take their land, but the law only applied to Canaanites, not other nations, and not out of hatred. It was similar to a judge ordering execution of a guilty person, not out of hate, but out of justice. I believe that this saying was not in the law, but was taught by the scribes who interpreted the law. They saw the commandment in Leviticus 19:18, and that commandment said, "You shall love your neighbor," and concluded that this means that they should hate their enemy. But Christ corrects this interpretation and explains that neighbor means every person, including foreigners, Gentiles, and enemies. All humans are neighbors, but because we all come from the first forefather, Adam, and we are also brothers through the second father, Christ. And being reborn through Christ, we are also called to a common inheritance from God, our Father in heaven. This, you guys, is very interesting because as Christians as well, we often misinterpret what Christ is saying for something else. And we kind of put it to our own liking. But here's Christ himself, and he's correcting us. And he's saying, look, I'm telling you, love your neighbor. It doesn't mean hate your enemy. I'm telling you, love your enemy. And that, my friends, is rooted in a humility. Humility is one of the biggest thing you can ever work for, because pride taints even the smallest actions that we take, even the best and most pure-hearted actions. If pride exists, it will taint them. As if I do not have love in me, then I'm of nothing. And pride is almost contrary to love in a sense or another. And then we continue on with Cornelius, and he says, Jesus says to love your enemies in heart, word, and deed. In heart, by loving them. In word, by blessing those who curse you, and in deed, by doing good to those who hate you. This way, you will be children of your heavenly Father, who does good to his enemies, giving them rain and sunshine, crops and fruits. God's mind is so great that he doesn't see any injury or blasphemy as a loss of his honor and glory. He is so impossible, and holy that anger or revenge does not affect him. He showers gifts on his enemies, attracts them with his grace, and reconciles to himself. He gives up his only Son to be crucified to save them. We should imitate these actions as much as possible, as much as we can. But I are called to just live a normal life. We are called to live a holy and Christian life. We are called to resemble the Father. We're called to be an extension of the Father. That's why he says, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Perfection it might be something that we have to work for our entire life, but is not impossible because it's not you who is doing this. It is the grace of the Holy Spirit who's working in you. That's what attracts people. That's where there's a reconciliation. So he goes on to say, If you love those who love you, what reward will you have? The tax collectors do the same. God will reward you in heaven for loving all of these people, for loving your enemies as well. But if you love your friends and your enemies, you will deserve and receive great grace from God for the glory that you're offering him as well. If you only greet your brothers, what more are you doing that? Greet here means to greet with a kiss and embrace, a custom among the Greeks, the Romans, and early Christians, as Paul says, greet one another with a holy kiss. He goes on to say, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Since you're chosen by God to be his faithful ones, his faithful friends, his heirs, imitate his holiness and perfection. This command refers partly to loving enemies and partly to all the preceding teachings. We should strive for perfection in all virtues like meekness, purity, patience, chastity, and charity, all of them. We should strive for perfection in all of these virtues and more, because that is how we get to reflect God to the world if we truly believe in him. Is this perfection a counsel or a precept? He says it's both. It is a precept that every Christian should strive for perfection, loving your enemies as well as your friends and keeping all of God's commandments perfectly. This message teaches that all Christians must advance towards perfection according to their state and condition. Wherever you are, just go for it. Continue going for it. Even if you mess up, get up and continue again. Confess to God. Go to confession, confess to God, and continue. He says to be children of the Heavenly Father, as Christ says, we must imitate his perfection. As Cyprian says, the children of such a great parent should not be degenerate. Wow. This, my friends, is really just mind-blowing. If you truly say, our Father who is in heaven, if you truly say that God is your Father, then you should not be this degenerate. James addresses all these believers, and he is saying that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. Christian cult to holiness and perfection by Christ should aim to be the most holy and perfect. Blessed Teresa said, God has a special love for the perfect, making them leaders who convert, who save, and perfect many. She vowed to always choose the more perfect action for God's glory. He goes on to say that Christ's precepts bind both secular and religious people, and both should aim for perfection in their state. And as God says to Israel, you shall be perfect and without spot before God, before the Lord your God. And this he says in Deuteronomy 18:13. My friends, this perfection also includes observing evangelical counsels and voluntary poverty, chastity, religious obedience. He says that Jesus said, if you want to be perfect, sell your possessions, give to the poor. Perfection mainly consists of charity and love, especially towards your enemies, as this is the highest act of charity and the greatest victory over one's self. The victory is over your own self. Those who love God and must love their enemies. They must conquer their anger. They must conquer their revenge and other passions so that they can receive the grace, this abundant grace of God. And my friends, we're going to end here for today. But this is such a beautiful sermon. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I will be with you in the next episode, and we will continue on with our journey. Until then, take care and God bless.